Welcome back, and if you are new here, thank you for joining us. Tonight, we unravel one of Las Vegas's most haunting cold cases. An unsolved double homicide that cut short the lives of a beloved performer and his partner. This is the story of 37-year-old Elvis tribute artist, Dana McKay, and 49-year-old Mary Huffman, brutally murdered inside their home, popularly known by locals as Mini-Graceland. Nearly 3 decades later, the case remains unsolved, and the silence surrounding it speaks volumes. It was October 1993, a time when the Strip glittered with neon, and the entertainment industry was thriving. Dana had made a name for himself impersonating the king of rock and roll, performing across Vegas and building a reputation as one of the city's most convincing Elvis tribute acts. Mary was his girlfriend, known by friends as kind, private, and supportive. Together, they seemed like any ordinary couple until someone decided their lives had to end. On the morning of October 2nd, neighbors noticed something was wrong. Dana and Mary hadn't been seen in a day. Their car sat untouched. And then, inside the house, police made a chilling discovery. The couple had been shot to death, execution style. Nearby, bags of groceries still lay unpacked, suggesting they were killed within minutes of returning home. The scene looked staged, cash, jewelry, and other valuables left behind. But one thing was missing: a single manila folder containing Dana's business and personal records. Investigators were baffled. If this was a burglary, why not take money or valuables? Why risk execution-style killings just to steal paperwork? The press quickly labeled the murders gangland style, while police cautiously called it a burglary gone wrong. But buried beneath those headlines were subtle details, the kinds of details that raise far more questions than they answer. For instance, Dana had reportedly been discussing security systems in the weeks before his death, even telling friends about receiving threats. Was he being targeted? And if so, by whom? In the decades since, the case has sat in the cold files of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. But that missing folder, the precision of the killings, and the utter lack of arrests point to one chilling possibility: this wasn't random. Someone wanted Dana and Mary silenced, and their secrets buried. But what were those secrets? And why would they cost 2 lives? If you're hooked already, hit that like button and help us push this story back into the spotlight. Drop your theories in the comments. Was this a mob hit, a business deal gone wrong, or something else entirely? Help boost this channel to 10,000 subscribers by clicking the subscribe button. When news of the murders first broke, the shock wasn't limited to Dana and Mary's circle of friends. In Las Vegas, a city known for both glitter and grit, word spread fast. A well-liked Elvis impersonator gunned down with his girlfriend, inside his own home? That wasn't just gossip. That was a story that cut deep into the city's image of itself. But to understand what really happened, we have to look closer, not just at the crime scene, but at who Dana and Mary were in the weeks, months, and years leading up to their deaths. Dana McKay was only 37 when he died, but by then he had spent years perfecting his craft. Friends and colleagues described him as charismatic, hardworking, and obsessed with detail. In the competitive world of tribute acts, Dana had carved out a niche. He didn't just mimic Elvis's voice, he replicated the energy, the wardrobe, the stage presence. It was an act polished enough to land him steady gigs across the Strip and at private events. But being a tribute artist in Vegas wasn't always glitz and glamour. Behind the lights was a tough business with its own politics, rivalries, and, occasionally, shady deals. Impersonators often relied on agents and bookers who moved money in cash. Competition was fierce. And where there was money and ego, there was also risk. Mary Huffman, 49 years old, was quieter in comparison. She wasn't in the spotlight, but she played a stabilizing role in Dana's life. Friends remembered her as grounded, loyal, and protective of Dana. She kept mostly to herself, avoiding the chaos of show business, but she was fiercely supportive of Dana's career. Together, they lived in a modest home in northeast Las Vegas, nicknamed Mini-Graceland because of Dana's devotion to Elvis. That home, however, would become their tomb. The crime scene itself raised questions from day one. Police arriving at the house on October 2, 1993, found groceries scattered near the entrance. It looked as though Dana and Mary had just come home, bags still in hand, when they were ambushed. Both were shot multiple times, execution style. Now, here's where things get complicated. Investigators immediately noted the absence of forced entry. Doors and windows showed no signs of being broken into. That meant one of two things: either the killer, or killers, were let in voluntarily, or they had some way of gaining access without leaving obvious damage. Then there was the matter of the valuables. Cash, jewelry, and electronics were left untouched. The motive clearly wasn't simple robbery. But a single manila folder, reportedly containing Dana's personal and business records, was missing. Why that folder? What was in it? And why leave everything else behind? Police were initially cautious, but speculation spread quickly. Some outlets reported the murders had the markings of a gangland hit. Execution-style shootings, valuables ignored, and a specific item taken, it fit the profile. But who would want Dana, an Elvis impersonator, and Mary, a quiet supporter, dead in such a brutal fashion? One theory pointed to Dana's professional connections. Vegas in the early 90s was still transitioning away from its mob-influenced past, but organized crime hadn't disappeared. Money flowed through casinos, entertainment contracts, and booking deals, often without much transparency. Could Dana have gotten entangled in something bigger than he realized? Another theory suggested personal disputes. Dana had reportedly spoken of threats in the weeks before his death. He was considering installing a new security system, hardly the kind of thing you do unless you feel unsafe. But investigators never disclosed who, exactly, might have been threatening him, or why. The missing folder stands out as the most tantalizing clue. Imagine the risk required to carry out a double homicide in a suburban neighborhood, and then leave without taking money or valuables, just one folder. Whatever was inside must have been worth more than cash, jewelry, or even the chance of being caught. Was it evidence of financial disputes? Contracts tied to his career? Or something more explosive, connections to people Dana wasn't supposed to cross? Police never released the contents of that folder, if they ever even found it. And over time, the case grew colder. Leads dried up, tips slowed, and the spotlight moved elsewhere. But if you ask those who knew Dana and Mary, they'll tell you, the couple wasn't living reckless lives. They weren't dealing drugs. They weren't flashy with money. They weren't even in debt. On the surface, they were ordinary. And maybe that's what makes this case so disturbing. Because if a couple living a quiet life could be executed in their own home, what does that say about the forces operating behind the curtain in Las Vegas in 1993? If you've stayed with me this far, it means this case has gripped you the way it's gripped me. Please, take a moment to like this video, share it with others who care about justice, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Your support could help us reach 10,000 subscribers, which means more resources to spotlight cases that deserve answers. Now, let's go deeper into the investigation itself, the interviews, the suspects that briefly surfaced, and the missed opportunities that still haunt this case. We'll also explore why, nearly 30 years later, the murders of Dana McKay and Mary Huffman remain unsolved. The murders of Dana McKay and Mary Huffman weren't just another case for Las Vegas Metro Police. From the moment officers stepped inside the couple's home, the sheer brutality and the eerie precision set it apart. This wasn't random. This wasn't sloppy. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. But as is often the case, the investigation would become a maze of contradictions, promising leads that vanished, suspects who slipped away, and lingering questions that investigators never seemed able or willing To answer, detectives started with the basics. Who would want Dana and Mary dead? Neighbors were questioned. Some recalled nothing unusual the night of the murders. Others remembered hearing what sounded like muffled bangs, but in a city where fireworks and gunshots blended into the nightly soundscape, no one thought much of it. Investigators combed the crime scene. They found no forced entry, no robbery, no signs of a struggle. Just 2 victims executed in their home, and that missing manila folder. It was clear early on that this wasn't the work of an amateur. The killer or killers were calm, efficient, and in and out quickly. They left behind almost no evidence. Forensic testing of the time, far less advanced than today, offered little. A few fingerprints here and there, but nothing that led to a suspect. No DNA profile. No murder weapon. Even the groceries scattered by the door seemed staged. Bags tipped over, cans rolling on the floor, perishables left out. It painted a picture of an ambush, of a couple caught off guard the second they arrived home. Detectives widened their focus. They interviewed fellow performers in the impersonator circuit. Dana was respected, but like anyone in a competitive business, he had rivals. Rumors swirled, professional jealousy, disputes over gigs, even disagreements about money. One line of inquiry suggested Dana may have been negotiating contracts that bypassed certain agents, cutting out middlemen who took hefty percentages. If true, that would have made him enemies. But when pressed, no one came forward with hard evidence linking these disputes to murder. Then came whispers of organized crime. Las Vegas in the early 1990s was still haunted by its mob-tainted legacy. While the casinos were cleaning up, old networks hadn't vanished entirely. Some speculated Dana may have crossed paths with people connected to these shadows, whether through booking deals, loan sharks, or disputes he didn't even realize he was stepping into. The execution-style shootings fit that theory. A hit, carried out with precision, designed not to steal, but to send a message. But again, evidence was scarce. And without a witness willing to talk, this lead, too, cooled. Investigators also looked closely at Mary Huffman. Unlike Dana, Mary wasn't in the spotlight, but she was well-liked in her own circles. She had no criminal history, no debts, no drama. For detectives, this only deepened the mystery. If Mary wasn't a target, then her death was likely collateral, punishment for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But if Dana was the true target, what exactly had he stumbled into? Friends of Dana recalled that, in the weeks before his death, he seemed unsettled. He mentioned vague threats. He was considering beefing up security. And he was more withdrawn than usual. What he didn't do, at least not publicly, was explain who was threatening him, or why. If he knew, he kept it close to his chest. And after his death, the one thing that might have revealed the truth, the missing folder, was nowhere to be found. Detectives did identify a handful of persons of interest. But without physical evidence, nothing stuck. Potential suspects were questioned and released. Alibis checked out. Leads evaporated. Some believe the case was mishandled from the start. That crucial evidence may have been overlooked or improperly catalogued. That detectives, under pressure to close cases in a city where crime rates were soaring, allowed promising threads to unravel. Others go further, suggesting the possibility of corruption, officers looking the other way, or failing to pursue leads that pointed too close to powerful figures in the entertainment business. For the families of Dana and Mary, the lack of progress was agonizing. Weeks turned to months. Months to years. With no arrests, no indictments, no real closure, the case faded from the headlines. But it never faded from memory. Especially for those who believed Dana's life and death were linked to forces bigger than one man's career. Before we continue, I want to pause and ask for your support. Stories like this matter because they remind us how easily lives can be taken, and how often justice is left unfinished. If you believe Dana and Mary deserve answers, please like this video and subscribe. We're working toward 10,000 subscribers, and your support ensures we can keep bringing these forgotten cases back into the light. Time has a way of blurring headlines, but for the families of Dana McKay and Mary Huffman, October 1993 never truly ended. Their murders, carried out with precision and purpose, remain one of Las Vegas's darkest unsolved crimes. The investigation, despite early urgency, slowly lost momentum. Tips dwindled. Leads went cold. Detectives rotated in and out of the case. And eventually, the silence around Dana and Mary's story became almost deafening. For years, Dana's fellow tribute artists kept his memory alive. Friends described him as someone who poured everything into his performances, not because of fame or money, but because of his genuine love for Elvis and the joy it brought to others. His life was built on music, laughter, and connection. Mary's friends remembered her as grounded, a quiet strength beside Dana's charisma. She had no ties to danger, no hidden enemies. And yet, she paid the ultimate price, her life taken in an act of violence she never asked for, never deserved. Theories have persisted for decades. Some still believe the murders were tied to organized crime, a message sent to someone connected to Dana's world. Others suspect professional jealousy within the impersonator circuit, where competition was fierce, and livelihoods were fragile. And then there's that missing folder. Its absence is perhaps the loudest clue of all. Why would a killer risk everything for paperwork, and paperwork alone? What truth was inside those pages, truth powerful enough to silence not just Dana, but Mary too? We may never know. Over the years, renewed interest in the case has surfaced sporadically. Local media has revisited it, especially around anniversaries. Former investigators have spoken cautiously about how frustrating it was to work with so little evidence. And family members have continued to push, hoping someone, somewhere, might remember a detail or come forward with information long kept secret. But no arrests have been made. No indictments filed. Dana and Mary's case remains open, unsolved, and overshadowed by the countless other tragedies that ripple through Las Vegas every year. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. It's not just about two lives stolen. It's about what their silence represents, a reminder of how violence can reach into the most ordinary homes, strip away everything familiar, and leave only questions that echo across decades. Dana McKay was more than an impersonator. He was a man chasing a dream in a city built on illusions. Mary Huffman was more than a victim. She was a loyal partner, a quiet presence, a life cut short for reasons still hidden in shadows. 30 years later, the murders still cast a shadow over Las Vegas's history. And unless someone decides to speak, unless someone decides that silence is no longer worth the weight of their conscience, the truth may remain buried forever. But perhaps the most important thing we can do now is refuse to forget them. Because behind every headline, behind every unsolved case, are real people whose lives mattered, and who still deserve justice. If this story moved you, please help keep their memory alive. Like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. We're pushing for 10,000 subscribers, and with your support, we can continue uncovering the cases that deserve answers, even when the world has turned its back.